hey, all you fans of Spread Aviation, we're here in a very unique hangar that not only houses airplanes, but it also houses a parachute repacking station. So if you're ever doing some aerobatics with a flight instructor or somebody else on board, you need to, by law, be wearing parachutes. Those parachutes need to be taken care of in a very specific way, and we're here with master rigger Wes Liu to teach us all about putting parachutes back together so that hopefully we never get to see the inside of them.
Hopefully they are just very expensive seat cushions.
Yeah, that'd be great. All right, so come on along for the ride.
I have a 40-foot packing table so that we can stretch out the rigs, and I'm going to stretch out your last one. I'm in the process of closing the one that I was doing tonight.
Perfect.
And you can get to see me grunt and groan and try and squeeze that spring down.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. All right. So here we have a completed parachute.
Almost. So I can pull apart the other one before I throw it up, and you can kind of see how the process works.
Perfect.
So it gets stretched out. I make sure that the serial number on the parachute matches the packing data card. We've been through that once, I believe.
Yeah, we had a weird parachute pack that came with a different card,
Right.
and I think I had to dig through some other packs to find the right one.
Right. Anyway, so it gets stretched out. Everything gets inspected. The lines, all the parts of the canopy. You know, we have the pilot chute that we take a good look at, because that's the part that's actually closest to the outside world. You know, somebody can get their hands in there and mess with it, whatever. And anyway, having checked it all out for wear, tear, and the occasional damage, we then very carefully and neatly fold it so that essentially we want it to very carefully, neatly come out when we want it to. And then the manufacturer has instructions as to how it gets folded into the pack tray, so that once again, when you pull out the ripcord, the little pilot chute comes out and it pulls everything away from the wearer, and you get an open parachute. And hopefully everything else in your day gets easier.
Yes.
At that point. So the part that requires some muscle is, in fact, the closing the rig. What we're going to do is right between these two built-in lumps that the good folks at Softy have given us, we're going to put the base of the parachute in there, the pilot chute in there, and that's going to hold it in place while we sort of just gently and firmly compress the spring and tuck the material in there. And this is what we call a pull-up cord. It attaches to the closing loop that's going to be left in the parachute, but we use this to pull that closing loop up through all of the places it needs to go before finally the ripcord pins go in.
And the ripcord pins are what's attached to the D-ring, the handle that the user would finally pull and actuate.
Yep. So while I lean on this, I'm going to take my closing tool here and wrap the closing loop around it and put this handle in there so that I have lots of leverage to pull the closing loop up through.
Oh, look at that.
Yep. That way I only get a moderate workout doing this.
Mechanical advantage.
Absolutely.
See, kids, math and school are important.
Oh, yeah.
So with this parachute, when you were repacking it, you're looking for damage, you're looking for abnormalities. This is a rather new parachute.
Right. So it's unlikely that you'd actually find a problem unless somebody had really been delinquent in handling it. The biggest thing that you get in parachutes is damage due to sunlight. Ultraviolet degrades nylon.
Now, these parachutes are made out of nylon, but they didn't used to be made out of nylon. There's a phrase called hit the silk. or that goes hit the silk.
Yep.
That's a reference to parachutes from
The 1940s.
Aha.
Nylon wasn't invented until about then, and it was a much less common material. And you know, parachuting for air shows, for instance, started in the late teens and early 20s.
Oh, kind of barnstormers.
Oh yeah, Charles Lindbergh made parachute jumps with air shows. But the original materials were cotton and silk.
Almost a recreational purpose, or really was it for emergency purpose? The military having the deep pockets may have been the big spender.
They started out as emergency parachutes. When they moved from propeller planes where you could rip up your airplane at 400 knots to jets where you could rip up your airplane at much higher speeds, they needed stronger materials, so they discovered nylon. Once they started using an emergency parachute, the troop parachutes used by the Army went to nylon, again for more for durability. And then in the 50s, some of the military guys who had been parachuting in the Army and the Marines said, you know, this is kind of fun. So
It does sound like something a Marine would say.
they started buying surplus Air Force emergency parachute. It's interesting that neither the FAA nor the Air Force ever considered, when they wrote rules, that people would want to jump out of airplanes for fun. As a result, there are more rules about where you can fly aerobatics than where you can jump out of an airplane for fun. The World Championships were in Orange, Massachusetts in 1962, I think.
That's just up the road.
It is. Civilian parachuting got going, and that, for pilots, the great thing was that they started paying attention to performance in terms of how the parachutes worked, but also how they fit into the airplanes. The military parachutes were pretty clunky. And of course, now we're looking at the result of all that work. This is it's light. It is comfortable to wear. You can see I'm putting the ripcord pins in at this point. You know, it can be. You can get them to coordinate with the colors of your airplane.
Yep.
All of that is the result of the civilian guys essentially discovering parachuting and parachutes, and there being a market.
So these parachutes are for emergency use only.
Yes.
You sometimes jump out of airplanes for fun, leaving a pilot to bring it safely back to the earth.
Yep.
But how many of those jumps do you have?
So I have personally made 1,680 parachute jumps.
Wow.
And I'm a very lucky guy. When I met my wife, she'd already made 800 parachute jumps. So we never argue about parachutes and parachuting and flying. So to make a sport parachute jump for fun, you're required to have two parachutes, one main parachute and one reserve.
And these do not have a reserve parachute.
They do not. When they were developed and tested, what they do is they will add to the front of the harness a set of metal fittings so you can attach a chest mount reserve.
Okay.
So that the guy, at first they test by dropping these attached to dummies, real plastic dummies, not merely you know.
Not lowly educated.
Right. Not pilot dummies or anything. And after they have done that kind of drop testing, they actually load up the dummies to put a FAA specified load on the parachute. It has to survive that. And then they will do some live tests where they'll attach a second parachute to the front of the guy, and they'll step out of the airplane and deploy it like hopefully you will never have to do.
So is that for certification of the rig by design, or
Yes.
is that for every parachute that comes off the line?
No, that's to get the design certified.
Okay.
The parachutes that are manufactured are visually inspected to make sure the sewing is right. they, like other FAA parts, I believe that the sources for the fabrics have to certify that they've been built to the correct specs. A lot of this material was originally developed according to a mil spec. So you'll find this webbing meets a mil spec, for instance. The fabric on the container is Cordura, so that probably doesn't meet a mil spec, but the fabric of the parachute itself is very carefully specified.
And so because this isn't tested, this is a one-time use product. If you have to use this,
Oh, no.
you're done with it, or does
Nope.
it go back to the factory?
Nope.
What happens from there?
If you were to have to bail out of your airplane, you would take your parachute to your friendly neighborhood parachute rigger, who would give it a good inspection. If there was no damage to it, you could pack it up and put it back into service. There are requirements for repairing damage. Some damage can be repaired, some damage cannot. But theoretically, if you tore the wing off your decathlon on Tuesday, and you landed safely onto your parachute and gathered it up in your arms and did all the paperwork and interviews and interrogations that I'm sure you'd have to do at that point. But you could deliver your parachute intact to your parachute rigger. That guy might be able to stretch it out here, give it a good inspection, and hand it back to you on Friday.
Okay. There are different sizes, shapes, and purposes to the parachutes. What do we have inside this emergency pack?
So the softy parachutes come with a 24-foot round parachute. It's a very sturdy round parachute. I have no reservations about your using it if you have a really bad day in the airplane. Parachutes come in typically in 24, 26, and 28, and I believe Strong now makes a 30. The parachute that's best for you is in part a factor of your weight, and equally a factor is your physical condition. If you're a 65-year-old guy who sits behind a desk all day and is not particularly physically fit, then you would be served by using a larger parachute. If you're going to bail out of your jet going 400 knots, you would be better served by a large parachute. So the whole process starts by taking a look at all the harness. We're looking at sewing issues that are sewing components that hold things together. I look at some of the fit. This is set up for a guy with a long torso. Is that in fact a good description of the guy who will wear this, or do we need to?
Nope, that's accurate.
That's accurate? Okay. So all this looks good. Probably this is eventually going to wear out, but that looks okay today. So I don't see any problems. I encourage guys not to scrape the hardware on the ground. It's plated and it will start to corrode, and I have had to replace occasionally this hardware for a customer, and they charge dearly for it. I don't typically bother to pull the ripcord.
Oh, but could we?
Well, have you done that?
I have once, yes.
Okay. So what I would suggest you do is put your shoulders through it, and yeah, sort of set right there. Try and turn your shoulders so you're facing right toward the whiteboard there.
We'll do this.
Yep, that looks good.
Okay.
And pull the ripcord.
Eject, eject, eject. Door, belts, butt.
There you go. Woo. We'll try and keep it off the damp floor, but that pretty much is it.
Sweet.
We tell people to pull until there's nothing left and just let it go. If we were going to repack it.
You see something strange.
So the parachutes that are in the other containers are Preserve 1s, basic round parachute. This is a Preserve 5, which is a whole different kind of parachute.
And you knew that by just seeing that first little bit.
Yes, because the deployment bag is completely different. So this comes out. This is built for a higher speed and heavier guy.
Yeah, I think I saw, what, 275 and what was the...
So it's printed right, typically on the parachutes, something that most people should look at. This is still only 150 knot parachute, they claim, but it's good for 275 pounds. This is a much different and more robust system.
So if I recall, in the other parachute, you have your diaper, and on the sides, you have these lines.
You sewed the lines,
that
right,
come through
and
here.
they were just in rubber bands.
Yeah.
So this is a military-style quarter bag, is what we call it, where the lines are stowed in these tubular areas
Instead of rubber bands.
So that's a more secure method. It takes more force to pull them out, which delays the deployment, which is important for higher speeds. What airplane is this usually used in?
L-39 Cy Marchetti.
Okay, so this is set up for that. This makes sense.
This is not what you typically see on the website?
This is not, well, I would guess it's on the website, but your typical, if you go to your friendly local parachute shop at the airport, where they skydive and stuff, you will not find one of these.
Wow.
These are a specialty item. And in fact, I'm going to have to go get the instructions from their website. Because I haven't printed those. They're on the website.
Didn't even know we had something special here.
You do, yeah. So anyway,
Do you want me to go this way with it? And
yeah, go ahead.
okay. This is definitely taking some effort.
Right. Well, at 400 knots, you'd be stunned at how quickly this is going down.
Losing my grip.
Okay.
Am I there?
Yep.
Okay.
So this is why we have a 40-foot packing table. And instead of rubber bands, we've got these really solid loops, and the parachute appears to be S-folded in here. So, and it is held closed with brake cord. Very interesting.
Interesting or concerning?
Well, I will have to go and read the packing instructions.
Okay.
This is a parachute of the type that I have not repacked one of these, but I have the qualifications to do so if I do what you're supposed to do, which is go and get the directions. So every parachute has a data card. This is an early one. Look at this. It's serial number 24 of that type of parachute. It was built in 1999. So I'll have to go do my homework.
Wow.
So the packing instructions, if this is a disposable item, a single-use item, the packing instructions specify exactly what it is. And and I would simply order up some.
Cool.
I'm not going to leave it sitting on the table like this. What I'll do is, this is what we call daisy chaining the lines.
Okay.
You'll notice that this parachute has long lines.
So we're going to be here a while. That's all right. We do it right. There's
Unfortunately, in the air, you don't get many do-overs.
no, there is not. There's no room for error here. This is definitely something that is more important than most other ventures, and this is why I have used Wes exclusively for the last couple of years, because I did have an interesting experience with another parachute shop, and a student was walking away after putting on a rig, and it just didn't look right from the back, and I said, "Stop!" Backed her up, opened up the Velcro on the back, and I sent it to you. The cover, I don't know what these are all called, but this bottom one
Flaps.
here, this
Yeah.
bottom flap was not in the loop.
Right. Yes. They had not been secured.
Yeah.
It's a very bad thing.
So when you get your parachutes back, pull them out, take a look at them, and make sure that that there's nothing obvious sticking out. And the rigger should make it right as well. Find a rigger you trust. Find somebody who is qualified. Like we have a master rigger here at our disposal, Wes Lou. And Wes, thank you for taking the time with us today.
You bet.
Being out here in the not as cold as it could have been, or that it has been over the last week. It was definitely cold. But for being out here and for taking the time with us today, this is most excellent, most informative. And thank you very much for everything that you've done with the sport of aerobatics, competitive aerobatics as well.
Well, you're welcome.
You are also the head judge. What is your title?
So I'm the national chair of the International Aerobatic Club's judging program.
Okay.
So I'm responsible for all the training materials that go out each spring to judges' schools. I get to have a voice on the rules committee, and my job is to encourage all my judge peers to give bad grades to all their friends.
Fair grades. Fair grades.
There you go.
Give them what they earned.
There you go.
Amazing the people that you get to meet being in this industry. Get out there, get out to the other airports, meet people, shake hands, say hi, and introduce yourself, because just like Wes was talking about earlier, he was on the phone with a 2-star general who'd flown SR-71s and U-2 spy planes. Like, that's how else are you going to get that opportunity but by putting yourself out there and saying, "Hi, my name is."
That's
and going
right.
From there.
That's right. Yeah, they're real people. They love airplanes too.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd be stunned at the backgrounds of some of the folks at the local airport who look like old duffers.
Yep. Well, you're not one yet. Wes, thank you very much for taking the time today.
You're welcome.
And ladies and gentlemen, Spread Aviation, take care and fly safe.